In this tutorial, I'm going to show you some different techniques for generating JSON data with Fabricate. To get started, I've created a database and I've selected JSON as the type. And I've added a few tables, a users table that has ID, email, first name and last name, a projects table that has ID and project name, and then a table to join them both together. So each user can be part of many projects, and obviously projects can have many users. So to download this data as JSON, all you need to do is click Export Database and choose the JSON-L file format. You can either download a single table or all the tables in a zip file. Let's just look at what the output would be like for the users table. So here you have a single JSON object for each line. But they're pretty simple objects. We just have one property or one attribute for each column. Let's say that we wanted to group first name and last name into a single object called name with first and last keys. The simplest way to do that is just by adding dots to the column names. So if you do name.first and then name.last. Now, when we export the database, you will get an object called name with first and last. Here you can see the name object, first and last keys. Now let's do something a bit more complicated. Let's say that we want to have an array of projects objects on each user record. So in order to do that, probably the easiest way to do it would be to use a view. So views basically allow us to pull together data from multiple tables, filter, group, change the order. It's really good when you have to generate very denormalized data. So let's create a view, and actually before we do that, our view is going to be the ultimate source of user records in our output. The users table is just going to sort of fade away. It's going to be the basis for our user data, but we're not actually going to export it. So the way that we prevent a table or a column from being exported in Fabricate is by hiding it. So if you click the settings icon and click hide this table when exporting, now when you export the database, users will no longer be part of that zip file. And then let's just rename this as users base. Now let's go and instead create a users view. Let's start by just selecting all of the columns from the users base table. There we go. So if you were to export this now, users would look just like it did a few minutes before, except it's coming from a view instead of a table. Now let's add in our array of projects for each user. To do that, we're just going to select everything from users base and then join in projects. And we want to group by our users base.id. And then to produce the array, we use a special function called JSON group array. And we want an array of objects. Put this on its own line here. We want an array of JSON objects, so we're going to use the JSON object function. And these are just standard functions in SQLite, which is what Fabricate uses underneath the hood. And I'm going to take ID from projects.id and name from projects.name. And then let's just call that projects. So now we have our projects array for each user, but you'll notice there's a little bit of a flaw. When the user doesn't have a project, then you get ID null, name null, and just one entry. So we need a case statement to work that out. So we need to do case when project's ID is null. And let's just do a little formatting here. Then null, else now, when there is no project, we just get null. And if there is a project, you get an ID of the projects. Now you might not want null here, maybe you want an empty array, so we can do that instead by just doing JSON array and providing no values. So if I hit save there, now I'll get an empty array whenever there are no projects. And then if I export this, let's just export the users table. Now you can see, let me take one of these guys and just put it in a new file. You can see we still have our name object, and then we have our projects array. So as you can see, Fabricate's not only great for generating tables and columns, relational data, but also very good at generating data for NoSQL databases, document databases, or other JSON files. It can even do deeply nested objects, arrays of objects, etc. Generally, the idea is create your normalized tables, and then with views, abstract a JSON structure from that normalized data.